Have you ever gotten done with the mix, couldn't be happier how it turned out, then do the one thing that leaves many mixers regretting their choice to becoming a mixing engineer? You take your final mix and start comparing it to mixes from your favorite mixing engineers like Manny Marroquin, Chris Lord-Alge, Andy Wallace, and so many more. As you're comparing, you can't pinpoint it, but your mixes are lacking something. Something that keeps them from sounding like the mixes from the pros you admire. I ran into this myself and I started to question what were my mixes missing until I came across one of the culprits behind my self-doubt. This little bastard right here, the channel strip. And even though it's one of the most powerful tools any mixer can harness, just like the Infinity Gauntlet, if this power is wielded in the wrong way, it can bring disastrous results. And by the end of this video, not only will you know how channel strips were wrecking my mixes so you avoid it happening to you, but you'll see how you can properly harness the power of channel strips to getting bigger and fuller mixes like the pros. So let's start with this, a painting. And before you say,
what the hell is a painting doing in a video about channel strips?
Trust me, by the end, you'll get it. Here is another painting.
Oh my god, seriously John? Is this a gala?
Trust me. So you could say both paintings are great and works of art. One painting represents what myself and many mixing engineers do without realizing it. And the other painting represents what pro mixing engineers do with their mixes. So now I ask you, can you see what separates one from the other? Painting A, sure, uses blue, but it looks rather simplistic. And because of the abundant use of blue, it looks a little monotone. It's not wrong or a bad painting by any means, and in the right studio or home could look marvelous and even impress someone like Wilson Fisk. But it just doesn't have the same punch or depth as painting B, which along with blue being the prominent color, there are other colors that help add punch and depth, which gives the composition more intrigue and clarity to what we're seeing. This is the problem my mixes and many other mixes have without realizing it. Painting A, sure, it's good, but it clearly isn't as intriguing as painting B. And painting B is what the pros get in their mixes.
So what the hell does this have to do with channel strips?
I'm so glad you asked. There's a couple ways these paintings can help us understand what's happening. When we reach to use a channel strip, it's doing something to a mix that is easy to not realize or give it second thought to. Think of it like taking those mighty Flintstone daily vitamins. They give you the amount of vitamins that you need for the day, and you think that by taking more of them, they'll give you the strength of 500 elf soldiers like in Lord of the Rings. But it's the absolute opposite. If you take too many Flintstone vitamins, you'll get sick, and instead of looking like Aragorn, you'll end up looking more like Gollum. Sickly. I mean, when we first buy our first channel strips, we're told they're just like having a console in the box. And there's hundreds of testimonials of people saying they throw their channel strip plugins on every track, and bam, their mixes just come to life. And it feels like when they were mixing on an analog console. This is what I was doing. I was taking multiple daily channel strip vitamins that I thought were beefing out my mix, which is what we're all chasing for in our studios. But using channel strips on every track in this way isn't really working the way we've been marketed to believe.
In a console with 32 of them, the color is different on every channel, and it reacts differently different days, and then, something breaks and you swap them around. So not every channel has exactly the same color, but 32 of these plugins have exactly the same color.
Most channel strips are emulating one channel, one color of blue, that is going all over our mixes. But as you saw in Painting A, like taking too many daily vitamins, this will create a subtle coloring problem in the mix. And it won't give us as healthy of a mix that gives us separation, character, depth, and clarity. And the reason this actually makes a lot of sense is when you think of a pro studio, what do you imagine? Perhaps a mixing console, analog tape machines, and racks filled with analog gear that have multiple versions of the same compressors and EQs. And the console sure might have multiple channels, but pros often say in interviews each channel is different. Because with analog gear, even if you have multiple versions of the same units, due to all the components that make each of these pieces of gear, each has a similar characteristic, but they aren't one-for-one clones, whereas plugins would be. This is the double-edged sword with analog gear that helps in a mix, but can also lead to some unpredictabilities in a mixing session. The phrase, "I got analogged," comes to mind. But these non-linearities in using analog gear help pros get different shades of the same color to create the audio painting we are aiming for, like in Painting B. Don't worry though, there is hope and a way to combat this in the box. It's pretty simple and something I've adopted after watching this clip from an interview with Andrew Scheps.
Actually, this is something I picked up from talking to Chad Blake, who's one of my absolute idols. But one of the things he said to me, which was really interesting, is that even if he thinks a certain EQ plugin is probably the right color for a certain thing in a song, if he's already used a bunch of that plugin somewhere else, he'll use something else.
Using different emulations of the same plugin can be a huge help. and creating more intriguing mixes thanks to the variations in color. But it goes a little bit deeper, because alternating between similar emulations of the same plugin is just one part of the battle of getting similar depth in mixes that analog emulation channel strips aim to offer. And the non-linearities I mentioned play a big part in this problem, and are probably, in my opinion, the biggest culprit to why sometimes channel strips aren't doing us as mixers any favors. This epiphany came to me when I was watching a video with Eric Valentine that opened my eyes to this problem I didn't know existed when choosing one channel strip from another.
When people get like a Neve 1084 module and they expect it to sound like they're tracking and mixing through a Neve console, you're not even close, because there are many, many stages of the amplifiers and transformers that are in this unit. It's got an input transformer, an output transformer. They use like Carnhill and Marinair transformers in there. And so it's in this thing. And then if you have a switching module or like a busing module, those transformers and that gain stage would be in there. It's also in the summing stage. Anything that you record on this is going through at least 6 transformers and 3 of these gain stages.
Not all, but many channel strip plugins don't include all the non-linearities of what is happening inside of the signal path in a console 100%. Yes, there are plugins like Wave's SSL 4000E version 2 plugin and MixHub that clones the input and output signal paths, but there is multiple stages of harmonic distortion and saturation happening within a console. Plus, another thing that is easily missed, each EQ and dynamic section on a console is reacting a little bit differently as well. So the input and output stage being cloned is great, but without the entire signal chain having variances, you're stuck with a different version of the same plugin with fancier marketing. Which is why companies like Brainworks have done something amazing for in-the-box mixers. They've somehow managed to digitally recreate the magic that happens when audio passes through multiple stages of components in a console, including the nuances with each channel's EQ and dynamic section components at a channel level. The only other company to my knowledge I've seen introduce a similar style of processing is Cornev Audio with their amplified instrument processor. Incorporating these companies' channel strips allowed me to take advantage of this type of modeling, which within minutes easily and quickly helped resolve many of the problems regular old vintage channel strip plugins were creating. No more of me and my mixes being covered in the same blue. But did you notice something about the plugins that were just on screen? Here they are again. It's the one color that seems to be everyone's favorite, and it is the audio version of blue or black. And before you think I'm about to talk shit on SSL, I'm not. I'm just gonna throw a little shade.
You like that, old man? You want a piece of me? I don't want a piece of you. I want the whole thing.
SSL style plugins are great, and I think that part of the indoctrination to mixing is learning about the infamous SSL 4000E series console and its siblings. And once we find out, so many of us, including myself, can't wait to get our hands on a fresh off the digital press copy of an SSL 4000E series emulation plugin right from the start. Sort of feels like we're all in Harry Potter and the Sorting Hat is putting us all in Gryffindor.
Gryffindor!
Or that's what channel strip house we want the Sorting Hat to put us in. I asked myself, why was I only using SSL channel strips exclusively? Why have I never tried another type of channel strip? So for the next few mixes, I forced myself out of my comfort zone, and instead of reaching for an SSL style channel strip, I went for an API or Neve style channel strip to see what would happen. And to my surprise, I realized that some aspects of my mixing style came more alive when using channel strips other than SSL series channel strips. And when mixing different genres, some channel strips were better. This is just the tip of the iceberg in figuring out what different tonal qualities various channel strips offer, and what we can use to our advantage in any given mix. Not only did my mixes get more depth, but my style as a mixer came more to life as well as a result. And this led to another discovery I uncovered. Sometimes channel strips can suck.
Whoa, 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 whoa. You don't say that.
Let me ask you this. If someone were to tell you that you should commute in an old vintage car from the 1960s, you'd probably look at them a little strange. I mean, sure, technically you could get from point A to point B, but you'd be missing all the modern conveniences available to you with a newer car. And if your commute was extremely long, well, you can imagine over time how unpleasant this drive would become. And that is what a lot of us are doing by simply trying to mimic the workflows of mixers we admire. Traditional channel strips are great and have their usefulness, but nowadays, modern productions can require more out of us. And we as mixers need newer tools to keep up with the clarity needed for today's productions. Plugins like iZotope's Neutron 4 and Nectar 3 are paving the way for companies to explore the next generation of channel strips. There are even reimagined looks at traditional channel strips like Andrew Shep's Omnichannel and CLA's MixHub that takes things a little further in options. Or specialty channel strips Focus on the singular parts of a mix, like Tone Project's Basslane Pro and Cornell Audio's Amplified Instrument Processor. Just because something's been around for a long time and used by a lot of people doesn't mean it's still the best option for everyone. And to quote Barney from How I Met Your Mother,
new is always better.
but this isn't the only area that your mix is suffering from without you realizing it. Every move matters, and if you're not paying attention, well, the mix orcs might swoop in and your mix is dead from their ambush of mix problems. Which is why you'll want to watch this video right here for some genius mix advice from pro mixers that you'll want to start using in your own mixes right away.